So I'm just kind of going through a little bit because some of the other standards are like Pro Tour only and not really applicable for most of the stuff in Ontario.
The next one is quite important for Ontario because I don't know if you heard about this, but there was a lot of drinking going on at a tournament. I don't want to at all throw anyone under the bus here, but there was a lot of drinking at a tournament last year that was PDGA sanctioned, and some city folks from the city came out to check it out, and some drunk people talking to city workers, which is not a great look for disc golf. And an issue comes up where I don't, maybe you're an alcoholic, maybe you have issues with control, maybe there's a million different things that I want to empathize for people who do drink a lot.
Mm-hmm.
Personally, I'm having a beer at lunch if possible. Like now we can't, but that kind of thing. And I empathize that people maybe won't see OD tournaments, like the original Disc Golf of Ontario tournaments, as you should be allowed to drink because we used to be. But it is very hard for a TD to then walk up to someone and say, you're kicked out of the tournament because you're drinking. And so they've added this in as a stipulation. And it's just that a tournament warning instead of getting kicked out right away. It's the sole discretion of the TD, but a tournament warning is different than a courtesy warning. A courtesy warning only carries over throughout the round, and once that round is over, it's done. A tournament warning is throughout the whole tournament, and you get one warning, obviously. So if a TD sees someone drinking, they can now, or gets told and sees it, they can give them a warning as like okay, we've already established this. Please put it away. Don't bring it out, and we'll just move on. Which I think is nice because there is that whole issue about like lunchtime and stuff like that. So, yeah.
So is it my understanding this is now for any tier? It used to be A and B tiers. Now it's everything.
Yeah, I think for the tournament warning, I think it's just for any tier because you're not allowed to drink at all during any tournaments that are sanctioned. So it's like, it was like a way to warn someone instead of fully kicking them out. Because a lot of people, basically what was happening was leniency. They'd be like, oh, well, it's fine. Just don't drink again. And then they drink again and they'd be like, hey, we talked about this. And they'd be like, oh, okay. And they kind of felt bad. So at least if you give them a warning, it's more official. You don't feel like you're letting them off the hook, but you're not letting them off completely off the hook. So it feels a little bit better that way. But yeah. And then, so then there's majors and elite series eligibility and all that. So a lot of stuff about the sanctioned major and elite tournaments. I guess we don't have a lot of elite series anymore.
No, not that there's a ton of A tiers in Ontario, but I mean, they've now set out that the course must be set in the tournament format and available for practice for a minimum of 6 daylight hours each day prior to the event. For at least 6 hours prior to the day of the event. So that means Timmel's got to have all its flags and everything else up, and same with Fox, whatever else, at least on the Friday before it starts.
Is that for all events or just the?
It says A tier. It's an A tier requirement.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, and there are not to be any sanctioned or other tournament-related events that prevent or impede practice hours for other participants that take place during the day immediately prior to the competition.
Right. So that was an issue as well. And this is actually, I think this is going to be super relevant for Project 15. You are not allowed to go out and play that course. You do not get out of your car and go play. Where are we going to warm up?
Right.
Like how So for Project 15, luckily Gabe has that extra 9-hole mini course thing that you can go warm up on that. But you're not allowed to just go to hole 1 and throw a bunch of shots anymore. You're not allowed to play the course before the event, which is crazy because like totally understand you're not allowed to play the course once the event starts. But now it's like at all that whole day. That's a pretty, I mean, that's a B tier. So not that tournament, but
right.
Tier tournaments. But like if you think about that property or something like that, it's kind of crazy. So that's another workaround for TDs to have to figure out where they can have a practice area as well. I believe there was also another, so I don't know how, I don't know where in this part this is, but it is in there. There's a required check-in now at tournaments. So it is not required to check in. It is required for, I think, A tier and above. But say you're running a B or a C tier, and you write in Disc Golf Scene mandatory check-in from 8 o'clock till 9 o'clock. And then you have a players meeting at 9 and tee off at 9:30.
I must have gone right through it. So, yeah, so it has been. So it looks like it was only part of the Pro Tour and Elite Series section. However, a pre-tournament check-in is required for players in A tiers and is suggested for all other tiers.
Yes, so it's not mandatory for all other tiers. So B and C, they might have it, but this is what you need to know as a player. If you do not go to a mandatory check-in, and the TD has to identify that it's mandatory,
right?
Whether that's on Disc Golf Scene or via email or whatever, if they say check-in is mandatory and you don't show up until whenever, you can be kicked out of the tournament. And this just recently happened to a friend of mine. And if you miss, so from say it was 8 till 9, you can come anytime to check in. 9 o'clock, a players meeting starts, and you're not teeing off till 9:30, and you show up at 9:05, or 9 o'clock, you're there for the players meeting, but you never walked over and checked in. That TD can now say you are kicked out. And they do not have to refund you at all. They don't have to give you anything. They don't have to refund you. Obviously a players pack if you're amateur, but they don't have to refund you at all. And they can kick you out. They don't have to. It's up to the TD's discretion. So the reason why you need to know this as a player is because if you are like me and you're in a division that may only have 3 people, and I don't show up from 8 till 9, and they don't know if I'm coming, what happens if I don't show up? Because now I only have 2 people on my card, and how is the TD going to rectify that? And TDs were having this happen so often. So what they've done is now if you're worried about this, so if you're a TD and you're concerned about this happening at your event, like you have to reshuffle cards, you can make a mandatory check-in and make sure that all the players are there. That way, this TD now has from 9 until 9:30 to be able to reshuffle his cards, to notify players, because you can't think about these players who have to be told, oh, you're going to a different hole now. You can't just do that in 2 minutes. So it's a whole issue that was to help TDs cover themselves and be able to say, you know what, you've put me in a bad position and I've taken you out because you didn't show up. So I'm not putting you back in. You're going to go. I mean, if I was a TD and someone did show up, if I could make that work, I would try to, but in this situation, the TD had enough of that shit and kicked that person out, and that's their choice. But this is something that could come up. It's something that as a player, this is why you need to read the rules and protect yourself, that if there's a players meeting and you don't show up for it and it's mandatory, you might be forfeiting all your money.
Yeah, I mean, generally speaking, and I'm just going to use this generality, if it's staggered start, so if you have tee times, there's likely going to be a players meeting for each card, or the TD is going to decide everyone for this block of time needs to show up at this time for one players meeting, so I don't have to repeat the same thing 20 times.
Not for, I know, but this isn't about players meetings.
No, I'm just saying, sorry, like they'll set up a check-in for that.
Yeah.
Because it's not, if you have staggered tea times, a mandatory check-in where someone might be waiting for like 3 hours before they go doesn't make a lot of sense.
So if it's a staggered start or tea times, what you can do is say mandatory check-in 45 minutes before your tee off, or 30 minutes before
exactly.
your tee off. So you don't have to have like an established set time for everyone, but if it's established as mandatory.
Yes. Yeah, you can
but
establish
you can also do, which would suck, but you could also do like, you need to show up to the course on like, I mean, this would only be for like things like big, like nationals or whatever, but you have to show up to the course sometime between 5 and 7 p.m. on Friday night to get checked in. And they could have options. Like you could have a phone number on there and say you can call to check in. We just need to know that you're coming to the tournament. Like there's lots of ways around it if you're not able to get there, but you need to make the effort to talk to the TD about it.
Right. 100%.
But yeah, that came up recently. And this is like, I didn't even know that was a rule this year. There's so many changes that like that little tiny thing got someone kicked out of one of the first tournaments of the year because they didn't know. And it was just such a little tiny rule. But there's a lot of stuff like that are in these rule changes.
Yeah, I mean, we have suspension of play, which happened. I don't know how often it happened last year, but I know there were a couple of times for sure. Like it may have rained every tournament weekend. It wasn't necessarily thunder and lightning, but the suspension of play rule has been updated such that if there's evidence that you stopped before the stoppage in play, you could be penalized, as well as if you continue to play after the stoppage has been called, you can be penalized.
This is so scary. I hate this so much. We were at Sudbury last year.
Yep.
And some women just come walking through our fairway going, oh, it's a rain delay. And we're like, the hell are you talking about? And they're like, yeah, they just blew horns. We heard horns. And we were like, I don't think that was for us, though. I thought that was just someone honking. Like, I didn't think that was, I thought he had a blowhorn, like a horn thing, not a car horn. And they were like, no, for sure. And then these guys on another cart start yelling to us, like, what are you guys doing? And we're like, oh, I think there's a delay. And then they're like, no, we got a text that says to keep playing, that wasn't for us. And then I guess on PDGA live scoring, they got an alert, but on our scorecards, we couldn't see the alert for whatever reason, connectivity issues or whatever.
I've heard Sudbury sometimes has issues with that.
But then those women were like, oh, okay, and went back out to their hole. And it's like, that is terrifying that they could have been penalized for that this year. Because, like, they're trying to be safe. You're screwed if you don't go in. And then if you do go in and it wasn't the right time, you're also screwed. So you're just like standing there frozen in fear of like, I don't want to get stroked. So I don't like that at all.
No, it's funny you talk about standing frozen in fear. Like, it sounds like exactly what happened with the girls in Guelph, the ladies in Guelph. Sorry, I should be better about this, because they were like in the middle of the fairway when the rain just decided to come down on them. And they're just like, we haven't officially been called off. And even so, like, they were in the middle of nowhere on that course.
Yeah. I'm going to suggest too, players, if that happens, shove a stick in front of your mini and leave your mini there. They are $2. Who the hell cares? Leave your mini and shove a stick in the ground. Cause, someone didn't want to leave their mini. And that's what we did, was shove the stick in. But if you do both, like that way you, for sure, this is where you are. And
so I don't know that was their concern. I think their concern was really because of where they were on the golf course. They were also the tallest things around. So if there were to be lightning, like, them moving around is just attracting it.
Well, in Kat's interview, she was talking about some tournament where they were like hiding under a shelter or hiding under trees. She's like, yeah, we were just all huddled under the tree. And I was like, oh my God, isn't that what you're not supposed to do? Because if the tree gets struck by lightning and you're standing on the roots, you get struck by lightning.
Yeah.
So I was like, but it's not. Yeah, it's not safe no matter what you do.
I do recall that there was a shelter somewhere out on the back nine of that course, or I guess it would have been back nine of the disc golf course, where I guess probably an on-course washroom,
Oh, okay,
where
yeah.
they probably could have been under. They could have been under that as well, but they're like, we're not coming in, and I think they
She
reached
said
out to TD, being like, it's. They feel less safe walking all the way back in than just like finding somewhere to hide on the course.
yeah, which is totally fine. Like you don't
Yeah,
have
so
to technically go all the
like
way back.
we've clearly stopped playing. We're just not coming back.
I have to say though, I continued playing once. We didn't
Yeah,
realize, and I guess where we were, we just couldn't hear it because of the way the wind was blowing, and
right.
we just kept playing. And then people were like, "You guys are supposed to stop," and we are like, "Oh, okay."
So it does go on to say that if there's evidence that the player was aware of the stoppage, so if you didn't hear it, you're too far away from
Right.
wherever they're making the noise, like they're not going to penalize you unless like if they've sent out text messages and they've done their like if the TD's done his due diligence and you're still playing like 2-3 holes, that's a problem. A couple of throws, I don't know if anyone's gonna necessarily come down on it unless it's really obvious that you knew that you shouldn't have been playing and kept playing. But I don't know anyone that would. If it's that unsafe that they're stopping the tournament, I'm probably not still throwing a disc.
Yeah.
But that's just me personally.
Some of us like to live dangerously.
I have never been struck by lightning. I don't think the idea of it sounds particularly wonderful. So
Extreme.
I'm gonna leave that alone.
Yeah. Yeah. So I like that there's a required division minimum for A tiers, but at least for us back in the day, I was talking about how when I did my interview that we had issues with not getting equivalent women's divisions. So
Yeah.
I know it doesn't affect us very much, but it is really nice to see that solidified in a formal way that we deserve, equity at least.
So I mean, it does go on to say that they have to be offered. So
Yeah.
if you're putting it up there, you have to offer it. It's not necessarily saying you're going to get anyone playing it.
Well, there is also still the risk of like if you get one FPO, they can be like, "Oh, we're just going to combine the division or whatever they want to do." Well, I guess that would be more like if you get one FA1, they might combine it and be like, "You can play FPO or not play." Or whatever, or go to the mixed division, like you can go to MA1 or whatever and play that instead. But yeah, very true. It doesn't always mean that it'll be there, but
they have to offer it. Doesn't necessarily mean anyone's going to sign up, unfortunately.
Yeah. Relief from obstacles. They just crossed out that it has to be behind your lie. So if there's a bee's nest right in your face, but it's in front of your lie, you can move back. But that's only for harmful insects or animals or designated by the TD. So that's really not that much of a change. It just says that you get relief from it.
Well, that's always nice.
Yeah.
And if you have a hazard next to an OB, which I don't think I've seen a lot of like in actual playing, I'm not saying it doesn't exist.
It'd be hard to have, because usually in my experience, hazards have only been sand traps. Like I've almost never seen them as anything else, except Harry Harvest. They made mustaches. They put them in the fairways. You couldn't see them. You'd like get up there. No, I'm in it. But
so I guess if you ran okay, not that this ever happens on a golf course, but let's say you couldn't identify where the green started, or there wasn't a fringe on a golf green, and you have the sand trap that goes right along it. Not that it occurs, but let's hypothetically, if you have the sand trap's a hazard, the golf green's OB, they're right next to each other. The way I'm reading this, it's saying the line defining the edge of the hazard is part of the hazard. So the
Right.
edge of that sand trap is the edge of the hazard. If it's shared between that, it's considered part of out of bounds. So if your disc is just barely out of the hazard, like it's supported on the top of the sand trap, but that's OB, you're now choosing between being in the hazard and being OB.
So what the point is like, say there was a strip of like a path, like a pathway.
Okay.
Like it's, say, a cement path. And then I don't know why this would happen, but then the patch of grass right beside it was hazard. If your disc is not touching the inside of the hazard, then you're out of bounds.
Okay.
But if your disc is like, do you know what I mean? Like, because the line is OB.
Right.
The OB line is OB. So
Right.
you can't just be touching the hazard line. You have to actually be inside the hazard line.
Right.
And I don't know why this would matter, because
it's
to be
fair,
fair, I'd rather be OB because I get a meter in. If I'm on just hazard, I don't get a meter in. Well, actually, I guess I get a meter away, but I don't get a meter. Yeah, so I guess it's the same thing. It just It really feels like the same thing, and you get the same amount of strokes. So I don't even get what this would be for.
I don't like. I see it's a new rule. They've like highlighted and everything. I'm like, I don't understand this rule because I don't know where it would come into play, because I don't know. Like, again, most hazards that we deal with are a sand trap on a golf course.
Yeah.
And they're almost never bordering an OB, like directly bordering an OB line. And I can't.
What if it was like a poison ivy bush? That's a hazard.
Potentially.
That's.
But it's generally marked off in its casual relief.
I don't know. If you at home have any experience with something like this, please comment what the scenario was to make this rule possible. We have no idea.
But also, you're getting the stroke either way. It's just where you're throwing from.
Exactly. And it doesn't even matter, because where you're throwing from, you either get a meter in, which you can angle whatever way you want, or you get a meter directly in because you're right next to the OB. You always get a meter in. I don't know, but...
So you're likely standing in the hazard regardless of what you do. So it's like, I don't understand the penalty.
Yeah. Maybe, I don't know. But this also brings up, I just thought, like, if you're OB and then you bring your lie-in into a hazard, are you now getting both of those strokes?
I don't know.
I don't know. I guess they don't compound rules, so maybe not, but that's weird. Let's just move on. I don't know. Oh, my favorite rule that I get to bring up. Yes. If you have not read this rule, please go back and read about misplays. Misplays have about 5,000 stipulations, and one of them is wrong target. So the issue is that if you go into the wrong target, like at Bronte, happens all the time. If you throw into the yellow basket, it's totally fine as long as it's not, and this is the weird stipulation, if it is elevated and it's above 2 meters and the 2 meter rule is in effect, then you get stroked for it. That's the only time you would ever get stroked for going in the wrong target now.
But if it's, I thought you couldn't have a target that was above 2 meters anyways.
Yeah. I mean, you could have a hanging basket, I guess. That could maybe. I don't know. But yeah, it's never going to come up. Basically what they're saying in the misplay rule, if you say I played Bronte and I played to the yellow hole and I was supposed to go to a red hole, I would just keep playing from where I went in.
Right.
Basically what they're establishing here is that you're not misplaying the hole if you go to the wrong basket on the same hole. It's only when you go to it, like, say I was playing at Bronte and for whatever reason on 18, I went to 17's basket, like way to the left.
Yeah.
You know, got my drive out there and then thought, I'm going to go that way for whatever reason. That would be a misplay, I think, because you're going to the wrong target and you're holding out in the wrong target.
Right. Well, but if also, to use Bronte, if you are playing to red, go into the yellow basket and have a brain fart and just walk off to the next hole, that's a misplay.
Yes.
100%. You've played the
It's
wrong hole.
yeah. So if you start the next hole, then it's a misplay. If you
Yes.
realize at any time, even if everyone's starting to walk away and you go, "Oh, I played the wrong hole," you can finish the hole properly and technically it's fine. I mean,
Okay.
technically you still have to go in order, so you really wouldn't have but you would have noticed by then anyways. So basically they're just saying it's not a misplay because you've holed out. It's only a misplay if you go on to the next hole. And it's
Yes.
only a misplay if you like completely
And if
go to
you're completely on the wrong hole.
yeah. Yeah, if you're completely on the wrong hole. So, but if you haven't looked at misplay, please go do it. It is like the most convoluted rule. There's so many different results that can come from it. You can get one stroke, you can get two strokes, you can get par plus four. There's so many different reasons why you could misplay. And it's probably one of the most important rules for anyone to just generally know because it's the one that's going to happen the most. It comes up so much. It happened twice in one tournament in one day, and both people got different results because it was two different TDs, like one at one course and one at the other, and nobody's really used this, like they hadn't used that rule before, and they had to figure it out, and then they had to change the scores because they gave out strokes wrong and they had to fix it, and it was totally fine, but it's so convoluted. That's how complicated it is. So just make sure you like go and get familiar with it at least.
And interesting because the first tournament's being King's Forest. The question that comes up regarding bridges is an interesting one because if you land your disc on a bridge but it's over water, is it OB?
Right.
And it's the answer seems to go, it depends.
Yeah.
If the TD says the bridge is OB, basically use a provisional. If the edge of the water is the OB line, then the second you're over the water on the bridge, you're out of bounds.
Yeah.
Unless the TD has specifically said that bridge is in.
I did that at King's Forest on that super long, whatever that hole is. I want to say 12, but it's probably wrong. I landed on the bridge and I played from there. Because if you look underneath the bridge where I was, there was just land.
Right.
But also my whole card was like, well, nobody's ever said the bridge is OB. But I have 100% seen at tournaments, and this is speaking to the diligence of the TD, thinking things through. Good job I can't even remember what tournament or who did it. There's water and there's bridge, and they marked, instead of marking it's like all the shit that you're not going to walk into, rough before the water. So they've marked where the tall grass starts. They went all the way along, and they went right in front of the bridge and kept going. And that way it shows you that the bridge is also OB. I think if you're at a course as a TD with bridges, that's the best way to do it, is to figure out, can you draw a line there? Or do you put that in your OB manual that bridge is not OB or bridge is OB? Because my biggest case for people on the course when they're not sure is, did the TD say it? If they didn't say it, that's their fault that you're playing it this way, not yours. It's not your fault. It's too bad they didn't put that in there. And it's not, the TD's like not bad for not doing that. It's just, we can't assume what you meant. And if you didn't specifically say that that's OB, we can't assume it's specifically OB. So I think that goes back to like TDs being really prepared for their courses and really prepared for what might happen and really know their course really well. So that's weird though, but I have seen it both ways. So
yeah, it's like, unless you specifically say it, it could go either way and throw a provisional. I'm like, you know what? Throw a provisional is generally a good rule of thumb anyway.
Yeah. Speaking of rules, did you know that throwing a provisional is, you have to have your card's approval?
Did you also happen to listen to the party podcast last week where Kono made that really explicit?
No, I didn't, but so this came up. It came up at, I can't remember what, and someone was like, I think I should just throw a provisional. And then someone was like, I don't think it's necessary. I think you're in bounds. And then I was like, you should just throw the provisional. Like, you should totally just throw the provisional. There's no way you're walking back here. And then they were like, I'm just going to throw it. And they're like, well, I think that's like, I don't think it's necessary. And I was like, okay, but can she throw it? Because you need to agree that she can throw it. Like, I get your opinion is that it's fine. Like, that the thrown disc previously was fine and she doesn't need to do this, but you still need to get approval. And it was weird. Like, I didn't talk to them about it, but I was like, but it's cool with you if she does. And they were like, yeah, it's totally fine. And we all walked away and it was fine. But I knew that, and I don't think anyone else did. And I wasn't about to.
The way I understood from when Kona was mentioning it was that it's not necessarily that they have to agree with you. They have to acknowledge that they heard that you're saying you're throwing a provisional. That's how I understood it. As long as you all know, look, I am throwing a provisional. I don't really care whether you think I need to or not. This is happening. If they don't acknowledge it, it's a practice throw.
It says that the group agrees that a provisional throw may save time. So you're right.
Oh, okay.
Has nothing to do with if they agree with you, because that's what I thought too. But it does have to do with, like, they agree that if we stand here for another minute and you do your 30 seconds and throw, that's going to save us time instead of walking back. I don't see how anyone could disagree. I don't even know how this could come up where someone says no. You know what I mean? Yeah. Like, unless someone was like, oh, you saw it land in bounds, you know it's in bounds, and you're just doing this to get a wind read. I just don't see this ever happening where someone says no. But it is a weird thing that you have to kind of.
I also don't, in that situation, I don't see two people agreeing with it and the third person going, no, you're in bounds.
Yeah.
If they're in bounds, all four of you probably know it.
Yeah, let me tell you, if you're that third person and you're saying no, everybody's going to be watching your feet.
Yeah. You are probably very correct in that.
I've seen people do that where they're so mad that someone called something on them and they're like, I'm going to watch everything they do. Or I've seen, like, long time ago, but I've seen a guy say that to someone because he was so mad. And it was like, this is why people don't follow rules, because they don't want to be the dick that now everyone's looking at their foot. But it is funny to joke about. Everyone will watch your foot now.
So I don't know if you have anything else, but just looking at some of the Q&As regarding, as we talked about with lie and everything else, and I guess removal of obstacles. If my disc lands and there's this big tree branch right in front of me that's not all attached to the tree anymore, can I move it? Yes, as long as there's part of it that's touching behind your lie.
Yeah.
If that entire thing has fallen, it's in front of you, and it's blocking your shot, well, get taller or throw a turbo.
So can you break off a branch?
Pardon?
Can you break off a branch of it, right?
No, not at all.
But you can move it slightly out of your way, right?
So it's saying if any part of it is on the playing surface behind the front of your lie, you can move it. If that's not the case, then no.
Oh, okay. Because this came up. So this came up at Timmel, and something was like hanging in front of someone, and
has
they
to
were
be touching the ground.
This, and it was dead. It was totally dead. It was like someone had thrown a branch off the fairway. It got hung up in something, and it was just hanging there. And they're like, "Can I move this?" And we all said no, because it's not on the playing surface.
So how it actually I think there's a separate question that refers to a spider web or whatever. Oh, sorry, no, a loose branch is hanging down just behind my marker, making it difficult to take a stance. Not quite the same situation, but do I get relief? No, since it's not on the playing surface behind your marker. So if it's not on the playing surface, it's not yes, it's in your way, but it's not movable.
Yeah, so that's something important for people to know. Like the playing surface is technically the ground. It's not in the
Wherever
air.
you're swinging your arm.
Yeah.
So, I mean, good questions that I guess people have submitted, or at least have been
Yeah.
answered.
Those are always good because they're very specific, but then you're like, I've never even seen that happen. So you're like, nah, how good is that? But they are good to like kind of get an understanding of what the PDGA meant. Because sometimes when they explain those, it's like, oh, that rule makes so much more sense now. I get why that's a rule or something. So they're very helpful to get like a grasp on a rule. I think there is one more thing as well that's important for A tiers and things like that, because we do have a number of A tiers in Ontario.
Yep.
That's the only time this will come into play. But if you're not at the tee 5 minutes before, you can be disqualified. Is it disqualified? Yeah.
Yeah.
You can be disqualified. You might not. It's up to the TD. But for this situation, for example, Timmel Island, taking the ferry, you make sure you're not running up to your tee time because it might not be your tee time anymore. So you got to like kind of, a lot of this is, I think, feedback from TDs. It's so important for them to talk to the PDGA about some of the issues that they face. And I don't know if maybe the PDGA in the future will do maybe a feedback thing from TDs with their submission, but unless you go to them about an issue, they don't know. So these are all things that are, supposed to improve that for the TD. So make sure you're there ahead of time.
The last interesting one that I was looking at in terms of questions, it relates to OB, or potential OB, I guess is the case may be, and it's about if your disc lands next to an OB creek, but you can't tell just by looking at it whether you're in the water or not, or if you're fully in the water or not. If another player goes to your disc and just pushes it down to see if there's water underneath it, is it now automatically inbounds because someone else did it? I guess there's used to be a rule regarding if you touched it, like if you touch the disc without marking it, it's automatically out of bounds. But,
so my issue is if it's on that close to water, I'd be taking a meter in anyways.
Right. But it's a question of, were you out of bounds? Was your actual shot out of bounds or not?
Right. So
did you land OB?
In my opinion, like the best thing for you to do, stand next to your disc, take the meter in. Don't like stand on top of it, obviously, but like right next to it, and then put it, everyone's seen pros do that online. But you go in next to it, mark where it would be, and then lift the disc up with everybody there as a witness to see. Because I think if you push it down, it can push down the dirt. It's worse for you as a player. You want that dirt to be a little bit more raised, so don't do that. And then if you lift it and show where the edge was, like particularly if you lift it like backwards like that, you can see what ground was underneath here and see if it was touching it or not. There's so many situations where I thought I was in and my card called me out, or I thought I was out and my card was like, oh yeah, that's fine, because they just didn't care at the time or whatever, or they were being nice or whatever. But there's lots of times where it could go either way, and you got to do everything you can as a player to not screw that up. So you're right. Like you can just mark it.
So
determine it, and then that way you're not touching it before you.
The way it answers it, it says if you move your possibly OB disc, it's automatic. If you move your disc that might be OB without everyone there, automatically OB. But there is no corresponding rule that the opposite is true. If someone else touches your disc, it doesn't make it automatically inbounds.
Right. Well, now, I mean, if you didn't give someone permission to, like if someone came up and said, oh, let me check, and they touch it, you can courtesy violate them.
Yes.
Because they're not allowed to touch your equipment if you don't give them permission. Like if you think that made it worse and you're like, you shouldn't have touched that. Now it's all sunk down and there's water coming up. Yeah. So, I mean, it can go both ways, but I can see what you mean. Like let your card fiddle with it before you do anything.
Like make sure everyone's there so everyone can see exactly what's happening. Like everyone has to agree that you've established that it is or is not in bounds. It's not for you to make the decision yourself. It's not for one of your card mates to make the decisions themselves. Like, it's one of the weird ones that doesn't come up a lot.
I think it's up to my card mates to make the decision, because there's no way I'm ever going to say that I'm out of bounds. If there's a chance that you could say I'm in, I'm going to be like, yeah, I think I'm in. But, unless it's really...
It comes to OB means surrounded by water. So it's touching land at any point, you're fine.
Yeah.
But if you're on the rock in the middle of the stream, I don't care how nicely it's up on that rock and not even touching the water. It's surrounded by water. That's not in bounds.
Yeah. So that I mean, it's case by case, and that's kind of same as a lot of the rules. Really, it's just good to know them, and not know them to take advantage. Know them to know what you're talking about. If you don't know them, you can always look it up on UDisc. If you don't know that, you can just open UDisc, and it has officials, rules, and regulations of disc golf. And when you go into it, you can search based on the rule. I don't know about you, Josh, but I never search on PDGA. Their website sucks. I just go to Google.
Pretty bad.
And I'll do like foot fault PDGA, and it'll come up on Google, and it'll come up with more relevant things than the PDGA website. They're not Google. They're not focusing on their search engine. So I get it, but it is way easier to go just on UDisc and look it up that way, in my opinion. But each their own. And you can do that with the free account. You don't have to have the pro account.
Right.
Another thing to note too, it's very rare that this happens, but say, for example, I left after the tournament right away. I only have 30 days to claim my prize money or prizes or players pack or anything from the tournament that I should have gotten. I have to reach out to the TD within 30 days. Used to be 6 months.
Wow.
Yeah. And there is an issue where, like, if you never reach out to the TD, they're not obligated to, like, give it to you. So make sure you're, gift cards, coupons, whatever things, like, especially if you're getting merched out, make sure you get that code or get that coupon or whatever before the 30 days, or else, they kind of don't really have to do it. And the reason why I say that is because if you leave the tournament, they can say, like, I would have given it to you, but you left, right? Like, if you leave to get home early and don't stay for awards. So make sure, if you're one of those people that lives far away from some of these tournaments, make sure you can talk to the TD.
In fairness, it does say on the site, in regards to prizing, it says the TD must make a reasonable effort. It doesn't say the player. It's on the responsibility of the player to make the effort. Right.
But if they, like, I have had issues with my email this week. I don't know what's going on, but last few weeks, I didn't get an email from my work. I didn't get an email from Jason, who was making my disc stamp for me. I didn't get an email from our water heater company that we're working with to get our stuff fixed. And I don't know why, and they're not in my junk email. And I had to send them something, and they replied to it, and that's how I ended up getting it fixed. But you never know with junk emails and stuff like that. Like, as a player, I'd hate for you to, like, get it sent to your junk, you ignore it, or reasonably reaching out to them. They could message you on Disc Golf Scene. Who checks their Disc Golf Scene messages? Like,
only when I get an email about it.
Right? You signed up on that website, you have an account, you should be checking your messages. So I only mean it in the sense of, like, TDs have a lot to deal with. They are not going to send you something and then they're going to forget about it and not care. So you only have 30 days to get back to them. And like I said, I think that's only in a case where it's, like, kind of your fault that you left or you're not there for it. Usually TDs are very prepared with all their stuff they're handing out. But if you're leaving, that, I feel like that's putting it on you. But either way, 30 days instead of 6 months, which is not a big deal, but something new.
Yeah. And then, the last one, I'll try to do this quickly. Audible phones and pagers. regarding devices that make noise. And so basically the rule is devices capable of making audible sound or flashing light must not make audible sound or flashing lights from the 2-minute signal until the scorecards are submitted.
Ooh, all those people taking pictures out there. If your phone goes off, like if someone calls you, this makes it wildly more important to put your phone on silent too.
Mm-hmm. Now, I would imagine there's some leeway if there's a reason you have your phone on. Like if you happen to be a doctor who's on call, if you've got a family member that's potentially not doing well or whatever, like there is some leeway within the rule, I'm sure, in terms of that. But realistically, it's so that there's no distractions to the other players on the course while they're playing their round, and that's entirely fair. But it also says that if you are using headphones, they must be used devices that make a sound must be used exclusively with headphones or earbuds, and the volume must be kept at a level that can't be heard by anyone else on your card.
Which
allow you to effectively interact with the group. Which
is subjective. And like also audible is subjective as well. Like if you have really keen hearing, I can usually hear people's music through their headphones.
Right.
But like I'm never gonna call them on that because as long as they stand far enough away from me while I'm putting or whatever, I don't care.
Yeah.
But I think this is just to clarify things because one thing I noticed in there is that they have like glucose monitors and things like that.
Yes.
If it just says you can't make noise, they put that stipulation in that if it's medical, that you can't courtesy violate them for that.
Right.
And I think maybe they're just clarifying it a bit because the headphone thing is recent. It's the last few years that they put that in. And that's just because we didn't have wireless headphones before. And nobody would just have a Walkman with like headsets. It's more accessible now. We have better earbuds that will actually sit in your ear while you play sports. So it's just become more relevant. But I think it's because I think honestly, that rule is going to get clarified even more in the coming years because how loud is too loud? What do they mean by effectively interact with people? Like if I am acknowledging that it's my turn and when I'm away, what if a rule issue comes up and you guys have been debating it, but I have my headphones in and I didn't hear that. And now you're calling a courtesy violation on me. And it's like, well, you didn't, try to get me involved. You're just stroking me on it. So there's got to be a bit more clarification, I think, in years to come for that one.
Yeah. And the last one I want to touch on, just because I'm thinking about it now, I know we talked about undue delay a while ago, and I know the 3-minute search rule. There was some stuff on social media regarding Cynthia Ricciardi at Olympus. I think it was round 2, where she was searching for a lost disc. And it seemed to have gone on for significantly longer than 10 minutes. Now, or 3 minutes, it sounded like it got to about 10 minutes. It's my understanding that rule that all 4 players have to be looking.
Yep.
For the 3-minute timer to count. Number one.
There's two requirements for them to get stroked on it. The timer has to have been started.
Right.
And everyone has to hear them say, I'm starting a timer, whoever does it.
Right.
And all 4 people or however many people on the card have to be looking.
Now, as I believe it was on that hole where there was a significant amount of standing water, do all 4 people have to get in the water to kind of feel around?
No. I think like in that situation, I would say no, absolutely not. You do not need to get your shoes wet or anything like that. If you are standing there and they're like, well, you're not really looking. Well, you didn't get in the water to look. I go grab a stick and poke around. I don't know. That's good enough, right? Like, I don't think it's fair for someone to ask someone to completely soak their shoes or anything like that, or like even, walk into like
Mhm.
within reason, they're looking for it. And I've had so many situations where I'm like, it went right here. And people are like, well, I think it went over here. They're not even looking where I said my disc is. And I feel like
Mhm.
that's unfair. So, I don't think there's any specific regulations. And I don't expect people to go into situations that are dangerous or unwarranted.
Mhm. But and one of the things she said, and I, again, no way of verifying this. I think I think she was like unfairly kind of criticized for it, because if she asked someone else to put on a timer because she's already like ankle deep or however deep the water was looking for her disc, and maybe she didn't take her phone with her because she was afraid she fell down, she didn't want to ruin her phone, so she couldn't put the timer on herself. If
Oh,
no
you're
one
never
else
gonna put the
started a
timer on.
timer, whose fault?
I would
Like,
never.
that's not her fault.
Yeah, but I would never put a timer on myself. It's
Right.
not up to me to call the rules on myself. So I would
100%.
never expect someone to. It's on the other three people. And the thing is this is actually a really well-known strategy, especially, I don't know about MPO, but in FPO, and I would say Pro Tour and everything. You went into the brush on the left. I'm going to stand here and talk to the other girl on my card and pretend that you know exactly where your disc is until you say, oh, do you guys want to come look? We can't find it. And then I will go over and help you look. And the reason why people do that is because it allows like a grace period
Hmm.
to encourage that person to find it or give them an extra minute or two to find it.
Hmm.
A lot of the reason could be because it's super far away from where your disc is. So walking all the way over there, they find it, and then you're like, oh, I just turn around. I didn't even help. And I'm just walking back. So
Hmm.
it saves you energy if they do find it quickly. So it's twofold on why it's beneficial to you to save that energy, and assume that they know where their disc is. And then
Hmm.
also in like maybe a minute, maybe two of a grace period to be like, I don't know where it is. And
Right.
like, obviously, I'm not going to stand there for 5 minutes talking and be like, oh, we'll just give her more time. I mean, like, we're going to stand there for a minute or so, like maybe a minute, and then go, oh, can you guys not, is it, you didn't find it? And then they're like, no, we're still looking. And then I'll walk over. I think that is something that women do. I
Hmm.
don't know if men do that. And I don't know if it's something that's translated all throughout, but it is like twofold on that. I'm not about to get into any water or any, very thorny places if you're
Hmm.
just find it right away. So it kind of
But
goes, yeah.
again, as you mentioned, it's not up to her to to start the timer on herself. And if she asked the other players on the card to do it and they weren't listening to her or whatever, then if I'm her, I keep looking for my disc.
Now, the thing is your whole card can now be targeted by the TD
Right.
for that time. Like, you're not going to get stroked right away, but you might have an official all of a sudden appear on the next hole because you guys took so long. So there is like, you
Right.
are putting yourself into a risk if it's that excessive, and especially if it's A tier or above, you're going to have that
Hmm.
kind of reaction from the TD. But yeah, it's not her responsibility to call it on herself,
No, for sure not.
which is weird. I think a lot of people in that situation would eventually turn around and be like, all right, I guess I'm just going to re-tee. It's been like 5 minutes. I can't find it.
Hmm.
You guys have all looked. I think I just have to re-tee. I've had people do that to themselves. And then, someone else will go, oh, wait, but we haven't started a timer yet. And then that's what gets the timer going. So like she could have done that. She could have said, oh, I
Right.
guess, what do I do? Do I re-tee if I can't find it? And then if they say, yeah, you go, oh, aren't we supposed to do a timer? And then that'll prompt them to start it. So there's ways that you can, like, if you're worried, that you can
Hmm.
hint at it without actually timing yourself, if you're scared about time violations. I think it's all the ways that you handle and approach things and like how, you want to do it with the best nature.
But you're right. Like at the same time, like she's not going to start a 3-minute timer herself. This is the same reason that Nico's never going to put himself on going to start timing how long he takes to putt, or a million other things that happen on the Pro Tour that everyone knows about and no one does a damn thing about.
Yeah. Well, and speaking of that, like how rude to take your phone out and be timing someone.
Yeah.
So that happened to us at when we went to Croatia, and we were playing another team. One of the guys took just too long. He took 38 seconds or something, like not even at 40 seconds. And it was the first hole. And he was in the rough, like he wasn't in the fairway. So it was a lot of like compounding factors of why this went this way. But the guy walked over to our player and said, too long. And then they like, I guess, stroked him for it. So they lost the hole because it's match play, right? And then 3 holes later, every single person on that card has their freaking phone out timing everybody. It was so weird. And it was like, I understand. I feel the same way. If someone calls me on something, I'm probably going to be a bit more critical about them. But like, that's just human nature. And like, I'm going to watch your foot now. But it also, it's so how freaking weird for like me, Kat, Chantel, and Alicia, who are friends and know each other really well, to pull my phone out and start timing like Kat on her putts or her throws. Like it's so weird. But without that actual visual timer, how can you prove that they've taken too long?
Right.
So it's such a that's I think that this situation, like that whole situation of taking your phone out to time someone, is exactly why a lot of Pro Tour players are saying make it 45 seconds and make the penalization worse. So that way you will not go over 45 seconds if it's 2 strokes. And there's no way someone is going to go over 45 seconds. And it's 15 seconds more. It's not that much. But then when you look at Cupcake's video, you're like, oh my God, that was 45 seconds. And it felt like 5 hours. It was like you could see his anxiety. And that's what made me anxious when I watched it. It was awful. The guy's a great putter, great player, but oh my God, I'd hate that. Watching that every putt. It totally mess with you.
And again, you're mentioning it happened on the first hole. Like, sorry, the first hole, it's a courtesy. Like, you warn them first. Like,
yeah,
I don't know anyone that's got their phone out first thing being like, this guy just always takes way too much time, so I'm going to start on like hole 1, throw 1 of an event.
So it happened on hole 1, and then our team called it out on hole 3. And then I was watching this match because I wasn't playing at the time. I guess I don't know if I was off or if mine had finished, and we're watching from a distance as they just start coming together and they're like screaming at each other. Just these 2 guys, and like not like screaming, but they're like aggressively talking to each other about it. And then everyone else is like kind of milling about and like, I don't want to get involved, but I want you to stop yelling at each other. And then I think someone like an official came over and figured it out. But basically the issue was that they called it on hole 1. So our team was like, I'm timing every single shot. And they caught them on 1 and they called them on it. And the guy basically said that that was poor sportsmanship because he was doing it out of revenge. And our team was like, yeah. Yeah, of course that what do you mean? You called us on a 8-second violation on the first hole. It was a second shot. They were in the rough. They were in like the shit. There's no way that they were like, it made no sense for that guy to then argue that we were being spiteful when he was also like, how on the second throw of the hole, the first time this guy has thrown the entire day, are you timing his shot? You don't even have a precedent for it. And then you're calling us vengeful and saying that, yeah, of course we are. It kind of felt like you were being vengeful. So it's a really messed up situation, but that's what happens. And I watched it happen and I was like, I don't want that. And then it happened to us as well, where we didn't call a violation. I was playing doubles and we have 3 people on the card, like our single. and then our doubles, and then their single and their doubles, and we're playing doubles, and then the singles play each other, but on the same card. And the two guys on my card were like, tell her to pick it up. And so I said, pick up your putt. And meaning like, we're conceding your putt. We're saying you get it in.
Mm-hmm.
He was 10, 15 feet away for a 3. And we were like 2 feet away for a 2. So we were going to beat them on the hole. And the strategy is that if they never putt, then once they do finally have to putt, they won't be able to. Right. That's why the rules are like that in that specific team play. It's very strategic the way you're playing. And everyone knows that. And this was my first time there. I was like, pick it up. And then we got yelled at. And we got into this whole thing with that team. Not me and not the girl I was with, but the other guy on their team was just freaking out about how I'm being disrespectful, how I did that on purpose to mess with them, and like acting like we weren't competing for money. Like, I get that you don't want to manipulate the rules to affect someone, but if someone breaks a rule or if you're enforcing a rule, that's the point of the rules. And so it shouldn't be a fight. And if that guy turned around and called me on a foot fault later on or called me on excessive time, I'd be like, yep, I get it. You're mad. That's fine. But he didn't. And you know why he didn't call me on any of the rules? Because I didn't freaking break any of them. So
because you're a rules badass and don't break them.
Well, and it's just like, if you're, if this guy is calling us on a time violation, you better bet you better not make a time violation. Like, that's just ironic.
Mm-hmm.
So I think people get mad about these things in a unhealthy way versus it's okay to be mad about a rule being called on you. It's not okay to blame someone else for you breaking the rules. That's just like immature. And it's frustrating for you to be like, I can't believe my friend called me on this. I get that you might go and complain to your partner or whoever after the round that like I can't believe Kat called me on a foot fault. I'm so upset. But I wouldn't be like, it's Kat's fault I lost because of that one stroke. Like, that would be stupid. I did the foot fault. Shouldn't make up a rule to make me, you know what I mean? Like, so that when people do things like that, it seems so childish to blame someone else for your problems. Just like it's so childish for you to say, I don't want to keep score because I don't want to see the scoreboard. Like, get over it.
So first of all,
very nice way.
Unless something's changed with the PDGA's site works and how PDGA live scoring works, you don't see the leaderboard unless you want to look at the leaderboard.
That's right. And okay, so underneath your name, it should say what your score is.
Right.
So on the card, to be fair, Josh, the last year is not a good example, but the year before and all before that, we've only had 4 FPOs. So it would have been our leaderboard that you're looking at.
That's
so
fair.
I get that. And I think, I know on UDisc you can, but I'm very sure on PDGA, you can say hide scores. Right in that menu, people, when you go into PDGA live score, a lot of people go, okay, there's the 4 people, we're good, and they hit start. And you don't read there's a lot of settings in there that you can change. You can change your starting hole, you can change whether you see the scores or not. It's just like a matter of you being proactive. And like I said, when we were talking about that, know that if that's a problem for you, be aware of that, but like maybe start thinking about getting over that, because it's not, I was the same way before. I was exactly the same way. Most of the time I don't know the scores because I'm just oblivious to what's going on. And I'm like, forget as soon as we leave a hole. But if you know that that's an issue with you, maybe start trying to make motions to get better at that. Like, if it's a 3-round tournament, watch the leaderboard the whole first round and then don't the second and third. Or don't watch the leaderboard for the first and second round and then watch it for the third. And just help yourself get more comfortable with it, because it shouldn't be a crutch that you lean on, that you complain about PDGA making these rules instead of just getting over the mental block that you have about it. Because it's not, like, for me, knowing the scores in the way that I play is never going to change what I do. I'm aggressive. I make a lot of risky choices, and I enjoy playing that way. And I think it's more fun for me to make some crazy thing than it is for me to play safe all the time. Not that I'm not going to make safe shots, but I'm going to run that putt if I feel confident running that putt. I'm not going to run that putt and be like, oh no, I should lay it up because I'm so worried. And, you know, if that's your putting style, that if you run that putt and you miss it, that you're not going to win anymore, then, you know, maybe you didn't deserve to win. Maybe you need to change your putting style. Maybe you need to have a better selection, like learn how to loft putt instead of just spin putting. You know, there's a lot of factors that go into that limit you from being a better player. So don't blame the rules. But yeah, I mean, everyone's welcome to their own judgment of all of that. Like, don't think that because I say this, that I think less of you for being nervous about keeping score or anything like that. I totally get it. It's just when you've played for almost 10 years, you go through all these phases, and then when you see new people go through these phases, we're like, it's not worth it. Who cares? Like, get over it. But I understand and I empathize. I was there at some point as well. And I also hated checking scores, and I also hated leaderboards, and I would go all the way the whole tournament. I won a tournament. I won my first A tier, and I didn't know I won. I had no idea. I thought I was so far back that I wasn't going to be able to catch up. And the very last hole, someone missed a putt, and then that was it. Because they missed that putt, I came first. And I didn't know till someone congratulated me. And I have to tell you, I felt like such an asshole. I never did that again because it was so degrading to the person who lost, who came second, to have me go, oh, I won? Oh my gosh. It's like, it makes them feel, especially in pro, like you don't even care about what's happening, which isn't the case. You do care. You do care so much that you can't bring yourself to look. And I think that's an issue. So if people don't agree with that, that's totally fine. That's your own lived experience, but that's how I feel. But yeah, I really enjoyed this. Lots of rules.
Yes. Thank you so much. I'm going to have to see afterwards if there's any way I can chop this up at all and perhaps release 2 videos, but
yeah,
I can't. This is a lovely 2-hour chunk of video of the 2024 rules update. Colleen, thank you so much for your time.
Yeah, thank you. And thank you for all that you're doing. It's really awesome watching these videos. And I mean, some people like Justin Murphy, who I've known for years, watching his interview with you, it was so much fun to hear about someone who I know, but like so many things I didn't know about or get more insight. And then like I just watched Irina's too, and to get to like hear about these people and these kind of issues, questions like this, like I love your content that you're coming out with. So thank you so much from all of Ontario.
Well, I've definitely got to get some more people lined up because I'm running out of ones in the bank.
Yeah.
But it's going to turn into probably. As the calendar gets into tournament season, I'm going to try getting the winners, the MPO and FPO winners on after events.
Yeah, that would be great. You could do some TDs as well. You get like after Jeff and Kara do the Toronto Open, I would love to hear about the Toronto Open because there's so much involved in it and so much that they've done. Like that would be awesome to get to know how much it takes to run a whole entire week-long festival. So yeah, like that, I mean, that's gonna be awesome.
We're very lucky because I'm also on the tournament team. We're lucky that they've built the relationships over the last number of years that they have. Toronto has such a good community. We have events like every freaking day of this 9-day festival.
Starting on Saturday, right? With Silly Putt, I think is the first thing to kick it off.
Yes.
Or I guess, yeah. Because then Sunday Club is the second thing, right?
Yeah, Sunday Club is the second thing. Unfortunately, I won't be at Silly Putty this time.
Yeah.
But
yeah. It's March break weekend, so everyone's busy doing stuff. We're trying to get down to Syracuse to practice.
Yeah, that's. I mean, it's the one thing. But we're just gonna end